The proposition Naomi Foster carefully placed the stethoscope around her neck as she finished her 12th consecutive hour at Memorial Hospital. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her patients never saw anything but her warm smile. Being a nurse wasn't just her profession, it was her calling. "Naomi, your phone's been buzzing non-stop," said Jenna, her fellow nurse. "Everything okay?" It wasn't. Nothing had been okay since her father's stroke 8 months ago. The insurance had covered only a fraction of his care, and the rehabilitation facility was threatening to discharge him if they missed another payment. Their modest family home already had 2 mortgages, and her mother was working double shifts. "At the diner?" "It's the usual," Naomi replied, forcing a smile. When she finally checked her phone, the number of missed calls from her mother sent a chill through her. Something was wrong, Mom. "Ow. What's happening?" There's someone here to see us about Dad's bills." Her mother's voice trembled. "You need to come home now." 40 minutes later, Naomi stood frozen in her parents' living room, staring at the tall figure by the window. Dominic Blackwood, the tech genius whose face regularly graced business magazines, stood in her family's modest home, looking as out of place as a wolf in a henhouse. "Miss Foster," he said, his voice as cold as his steel-gray eyes. "I believe we have matters to discuss." Her mother retreated to the kitchen, leaving them alone. "Whatever you're selling, Mr. Blackwood, we can't afford it," Naomi said firmly. A faint smile touched his lips. "On the contrary, I'm here to offer a solution to your financial predicament." He gestured to the sofa. Reluctantly, Naomi sat, keeping her back straight. "Your father's medical bills amount to $487,000. The second mortgage on this house is underwater. Your mother's diner job barely covers groceries." He stated these facts without emotion, as if reading a shopping list. "How do you know all this?" Naomi demanded. "Information is my business." He sat across from her, perfectly composed in his tailored suit. "I'm prepared to pay all your family's debts. Additionally, I'll establish a trust fund, ensuring your father receives the best care for life." Naomi narrowed her eyes. "And what do you want in return?" "Marriage," he said simply. For 18 months, the room seemed to tilt. "Excuse me?" "Grandmother's will stipulates that I must be married before my 35th birthday to maintain controlling interest in Blackwood Technologies. That's in 2 weeks." "This is insane," Naomi whispered. "It's business," he corrected. "A mutually beneficial arrangement. You need money, I need a wife. I've researched you thoroughly, Miss Foster. You're intelligent, discreet, and your background is impeccable. Most importantly, you understand sacrifice." Naomi laughed bitterly. "So I'm just a convenient solution to your inheritance problem?" "Precisely." His honesty was brutal. "The marriage would be in name only. You'll have your own suite in my home. After 18 months, we divorce quietly. You'll receive an additional $2 million, and we never see each other again." "Why me? Surely there are women in your circle who would jump at this chance." Dominic's expression hardened. "I need someone who won't confuse this with love. Someone practical. Someone who won't expect what I cannot give." Naomi stood, pacing. The small living room. "This is ridiculous, is it?" He placed a folder on the coffee table. "Inside is a draft contract and evidence that I've already placed your father's medical bills on hold. One word from you and they're erased completely." Naomi thought of her father's face when the doctors said he might never walk again. She thought of her mother's exhausted eyes. She thought of the crushing weight of debt that suffocated their every hope. "I need time to think," she said quietly. "You have until tomorrow." Dominic stood, buttoning his jacket. "My driver will be here at noon for your answer?" After he left, Naomi sank to the sofa, hands trembling. The folder on the table held her family's salvation and her own imprisonment. What choice did she really have? Gilded caged, the Blackwood estate stretched like a modernist dream across 5 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the mountain view, while minimalist interiors spoke of wealth that needed no announcement. To Naomi, it felt like stepping into a museum where nothing could be touched. "Your suite is in the East Wing," Dominic said, leading her through corridors that echoed with their footsteps. My quarters are in the west. You needn't cross paths unless necessary. Her suite was larger than her parents' entire house, a bedroom with adjoining sitting room, a bathroom with a tub that could fit 4 people, and a walk-in closet already filled with designer clothes in her size. "How did you know?" she began. "I had my assistant handle it." Dominic checked his watch. "Dinner is at 7. Attendance optional." Then he was gone, leaving Naomi alone in her beautiful prison. The first weeks passed in a blur of adjustment. Dominic worked 16-hour days, leaving before dawn and returning long after dark. Their interactions were limited to occasional awkward dinners where he answered emails while she pushed food around her plate. The staff, whoever were another matter. Initially stiff and formal, they seemed surprised by Naomi's warmth. Mrs. Patel, the housekeeper, was particularly suspicious. "Mr. Blackwood prefers things just so," she warned when Naomi suggested fresh flowers for the dining room. "Well, I prefer things a bit less just so," Naomi replied with a smile. "And since I'm technically the lady of the house now?" Within a month, small changes appeared. Flowers in vases, music playing softly in the common areas, fresh-baked cookies in the kitchen that drew even the gardeners inside for afternoon breaks. One evening, Dominic returned earlier than usual, too. Find Naomi teaching Mrs. Patel's teenage daughter Priya anatomy for her biology exam. Textbooks and colorful diagrams covered the kitchen island. "Oh," Priya jumped up, flustered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood, I'll clean this up." "No need," Naomi said firmly, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "We're almost finished." Dominic's expression remained unreadable, but he didn't object. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, observing them. The brachial plexus is a network of nerves that conducts signals from the spine to the shoulder. "Arm and hand," Naomi explained, tracing the pathway. "On a diagram. Think of it like the main electrical panel for your arm, like the neural networks in Mr. Blackwood's AI systems," Priya asked, glancing nervously at her employer. To everyone's surprise, Dominic moved closer. "Not quite. Our systems are modeled on cerebral functions, not peripheral nerves. But the principle of connected pathways is similar." The conversation that followed Dominic explaining computational neuroscience while Naomi translated into simpler terms lasted nearly an hour. When Priya finally left, clutching her notes excitedly, an awkward silence fell. "You didn't have to do that," Naomi said finally. "She's a bright girl. Her understanding of neural networks is impressive. I meant allowing her here at all." "Isn't in our contract?" Something flashed in Dominic's eyes. "Contrary to popular belief, I'm not completely heartless." The statement hung between them, neither confirmation nor denial. Days later, a piano appeared in the conservatory. Naomi found Dominic there late one night, playing a haunting melody she didn't recognize. Chopin, she guessed from the doorway. His hands stilled. "My own composition." Naomi stepped closer. "I didn't know you played. There's a lot you don't know about me. Whose fault is that?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Instead of anger, something like amusement crossed his face. "Would knowing me better make this arrangement easier or harder, Naomi?" It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected shiver through her. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But living with a stranger for 18 months seems unnecessarily difficult." He considered this, then gestured to the space beside him on the bench. "What would you like to know?" As she sat down. Careful to maintain distance between them, Naomi realized. The walls of her gilded cage had just shifted ever so slightly. Unexpected Defenders, the annual Blackwood Technologies charity gala, was the social event of the season. For Naomi, it represented her first public appearance as Mrs. Blackwood, a role she had practiced for in countless fittings and etiquette. Lessons arranged by Dominic's efficient assistant. "Remember, we met through mutual friends, had a whirlwind romance, and married quietly last month." Dominic reminded her as their limousine approached the glittering hotel. "Keep conversation light, avoid personal details about your family, and refer any business questions to me." "Yes, sir," Naomi replied sarcastically. Anything else? Perhaps I should walk 3 steps behind you? To her surprise, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. That won't be necessary. Just ... Stay close. The ballroom was a sea of wealth and power. CEOs, politicians, celebrities all, orbiting Dominic with transparent ambition. Naomi watched him transform into a different person, smiling, charming, yet somehow even more unreachable. She played her part, clinging to his arm and smiling until her cheeks hurt. So, Mrs. Blackwood, purred a woman with diamond earrings worth more than Naomi's nursing degree. How did you manage to capture our elusive bachelor? We're all dying to know. Before Naomi could answer, another woman joined them. Yes. Do tell. Dominic has always been so ... particular. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. These women weren't seeking romantic details. They were probing for weakness. Some things are worth waiting for, Naomi replied, her nurse's smile firmly in place. Dominic and I connected on a level that transcends the usual social calculations.
Album.
Women exchanged glances. How ... Quaint, said the first. Though one does wonder what a nurse from where was it? Some community hospital could possibly have in common with a tech visionary. Perhaps she has hidden talents, suggested the second, with a meaningful look that made Naomi's cheeks burn. Just then, a distinguished man approached their circle. Ladies, I hope you're not monopolizing our newest edition. His smile seemed genuine, but something in his eyes made Naomi uneasy. Richard Wexler, he introduced himself, Dominic's mentor and biggest competitor. Only in certain markets, Richard, came Dominic's voice as he rejoined the group, hand settling possessively on Naomi's waist. I see you've met my wife, indeed. We were just discussing what might have drawn you two together. Perhaps I simply recognized quality when I saw it, Dominic replied coolly. If you'll excuse us, I believe they're announcing dinner. As he guided her away, Naomi whispered, Thank you. For what? Rescuing me? Those women were ... vipers, he finished. Welcome to my world. 2 weeks later, the tables turned unexpectedly when Dominic returned home in a thunderous mood. Found him in his study, staring at screens filled with plummeting stock charts. Bad day? She asked from the doorway. Wexler launched a hostile takeover attempt. He didn't look up. He's telling the board I'm distracted by my new marriage, that my judgment is compromised. Naomi's stomach tightened. This is my fault. Dominic sighed, finally meeting her eyes. This is Richard being Richard. He's always resented that I surpassed him. She hesitated, then entered the room. What will you do? Fight back. I need to show the board this marriage hasn't affected operations. We'll need to be more visible, more convincing as a couple. Naomi sat across from him. You mean actual dates? Public appearances? Yes. He ran a hand through his usually perfect hair. I know it's not what you signed up for. She studied him, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't the untouchable billionaire she'd agreed to marry. This was a man under siege. Tell me what you need, she said quietly. His eyes widened slightly, as if her willing participation surprised him. Dinner tomorrow with keyboard members, and their spouses' weekend appearances at several events. We'll need to look ... convincingly in love. I was in theater club in high school, Naomi said with a small smile. I think I can manage, besotted. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. Thank you. The next evening, as they prepared to leave, Dominic presented her with a velvet box. Inside nestled a diamond pendant, elegant rather than ostentatious. For appearances, he explained, helping her fasten it, but as his fingers brushed her neck, Naomi wondered if appearances were becoming dangerously close to reality. Shattered illusions, Mr. Blackwood. Your wife is on line 1. Dominic glanced up from the conference table where he'd been negotiating for 6 straight hours. His assistant's announcement drew curious looks from the executives across the table. Naomi had never called his office before. Excuse me, he said, stepping into his private office. Naomi, what's wrong? It's Mrs. Patel. Her voice shook slightly. She collapsed during lunch. The ambulance just took her to Memorial. I'm heading there. Now I thought you should know. His first instinct was to return to his meeting. This crisis didn't require his presence. Yet something in Naomi's voice made him hesitate. I'll meet you there, he heard himself say. 3 hours later, Dominic watched Naomi sitting with Mrs. Patel's family in the hospital waiting room. She moved among these people with natural grace, offering coffee, translating medical terms, making them laugh despite their worry. When she noticed him watching, she crossed to where he stood. "You didn't have to stay," she said softly. "Doctor says it was just severe dehydration and exhaustion. She'll be fine after some rest." "She's worked for my family for 20 years, he replied. "Of course I stayed." Naomi studied him with those perceptive eyes that always seemed to see too much. "You care about her." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "I respect her service." No, Naomi shook her head. "You care? You brought her family dinner? Called in a specialist? You've been checking your watch every 5 minutes since the doctor said she'd be back with results?" Dominic felt strangely exposed. Efficiency isn't incompatible with concern. "No," she agreed with a small smile. "It isn't." That night, something shifted between them. They shared a quiet dinner at home, talking about Mrs. Patel, then their childhoods, then dreams they'd abandoned. Dominic found himself telling Naomi about his parents' death when he was 12. His grandmother's cold guardianship, his determination to prove himself worthy of the Blackwood name. "Is that why you work so hard?" she asked. "To prove yourself?" A number. One had ever asked him that before, perhaps initially. Now it's just ... who I am. "And who are you, Dominic Blackwood?" Her question was gentle, but it pierced him nonetheless. "I'm not sure I know anymore," he admitted, in the weeks that followed. Their performances as loving spouses became increasingly convincing. They developed inside jokes, anticipated each other's needs, finished each other's sentences. Wexler's takeover attempt faded as the board witnessed their united front. But privately, lines blurred. Dominic found himself seeking Naomi's company, valuing her perspective on business matters, missing her when she visited her parents. Their goodnight rituals extended from polite nods to lingering conversations outside her door. One rainy evening, they returned home from a charity function where they'd danced together for the first time. The chemistry between them had been palpable, drawing knowing smiles from observers who believed in their love story in the foyer. Low, still buzzing from champagne and unacknowledged attraction, Naomi stumbled slightly on her wet heels. Dominic caught her hands at her waist, their faces suddenly inches apart. "Naomi," he whispered, his voice rough. She looked up at him, raindrops clinging to her lashes. Yes, the moment stretched, taut with possibility. Then Dominic did what he'd been imagining for weeks. He kissed her, not for show, not for witnesses, but for themselves alone. The next morning, Dominic woke with an unfamiliar feeling of contentment. For the first time in years, he delayed going to the office, instead instructing Mrs. Patel, now fully recovered, to prepare Naomi's favorite breakfast. But as he passed Dominic's home office, his eye caught a document on the desk: acceptance. A letter from the University of Edinburgh Medical School, dated 2 weeks earlier. The program began immediately after their contract ended. She was planning her escape. The betrayal cut deeper than he could have anticipated. While he'd been foolishly entertaining thoughts of extending their arrangement perhaps indefinitely, she'd been plotting her departure. When Naomi entered the dining room, smiling shyly, she found him cold and distant. The walls between them higher than ever. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Congratulations on your acceptance," he said flatly. "Edinburgh is lovely in the autumn." Her face paled. "Dominic, I can explain. No need." He stood, straightening his tie. "Our arrangement has clearly served its purpose for both of us. You've secured your family's financial future and your own education. I've retained control of my company. The contract remains in effect until its conclusion, of course." "That's not fair," she protested. "I applied before we even met. Before things changed." "Nothing has changed," he cut her off. "This was always a business arrangement. I simply lost sight of that temporarily." He left for the office before she could respond, ignoring the hurt in her eyes and the hollow feeling in his chest. Beyond contracts, autumn painted the mountains around the Blackwood estate in fiery hues. But inside, a winter chill had settled. In the 3 months since Dominic discovered Naomi's acceptance letter, They had reverted to their initial arrangement living. Separate lives under one roof, interacting only when necessary. For public appearances, they maintained their charade flawlessly. But alone, the silence between them grew deafening. Naomi threw herself into volunteer work at a local clinic, returning home only to sleep. Dominic buried himself in acquisitions and expansions, working hours that concerned even his executive team. Neither mentioned the approaching end of their contract, now just weeks away.
Ow.
Then came the evening that changed everything. Dominic was working late when his phone rang, not his usual ringtone, but the emergency bypass tone he'd programmed for family. "Mr. Blackwood," came Mrs. Patel's tearful voice. "It's Mrs. Foster, your mother-in-law. There's been an accident. Naomi's already gone to the hospital, but she was so upset he was in his car before she finished speaking. At Memorial Hospital where their strange journey had begun 18 months earlier, Dominic found Naomi outside the ICU, her face ashen. When she saw him, surprise flickered through her grief. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Patel called me. He hesitated, then asked, "How is she?" The truck hit her car head-on. "They're operating now." Naomi's voice broke. "Dad's with his care provider. They're bringing him here. But I don't know how to tell him if she," without thinking, Dominic pulled her into his arms. After a moment's resistance, she collapsed against him, sobs shaking her small frame. "I've got you," he murmured, into her hair. "Whatever happens, I've got you." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of surgeons' updates, coffee from vending machines, and quiet conversations in waiting room corners. Dominic made calls, arranged for specialists, ensured Naomi's father had comfortable accommodations nearby. When Dawn broke with news that her mother had stabilized, Naomi turned to him with exhausted relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes," he said simply. "I did." For the first time, he acknowledged the truth he'd been running from. Somewhere in their calculated arrangement, he'd fallen irrevocably in love with his wife. But pride kept him silent. Made sure her home, made sure she ate, then retreated to his study. 3 days later, with her mother improving steadily, Naomi found him there. She placed a document on his desk, the divorce papers their lawyers had prepared months earlier. "Ready for signatures at the contract's conclusion?" "I thought we should discuss this," she said quietly. "The 18 months are up next week." Dominic stared at the document, his successful acquisition of the moment forgotten. "Of course," he managed. "Everything is in order. You'll receive the agreed sum. Plus, I've added provisions for your parents' ongoing care. I didn't ask for that. Nevertheless, it's done." Naomi took a deep breath. "In Edinburgh. Your tuition is covered, as promised. Your flight leaves next Thursday." She nodded, tears gathering. "And us, Dominic? Was any of it real?" The question hung between them, loaded with months of unspoken feelings. "The contract was real," he said carefully. "The terms were met. That's not what I'm asking, and you know it." Dominic stood, moving to the window to hide the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "What would you have me say, Naomi? That I broke my own cardinal rule? That I allowed myself to feel something I swore I never would? If it's the truth, yes." He turned to face her. "And what good would that do? You've made your choice, Edinburgh awaits." "I applied to Edinburgh before I knew you," she said softly. "Before I understood what I might be leaving behind." Hope flickered dangerously in his chest. "And now? Now I don't know." Her honesty was breathtaking. "I want to be a doctor. It hasn't changed. But I also want... What?" He prompted when she faltered. "You," she whispered. "The real you. Not the contract, not the arrangement, just ... us." The walls Dominic had built over a lifetime crumbled in an instant. In 3 strides, he crossed to her, taking her hands. "I've been a fool," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting myself by keeping everyone at a distance. Then you came along. With your warmth and your courage, and suddenly my carefully ordered world made no sense." "Is that such a bad thing?" she asked, a small smile playing at her lips. "It terrified me," he confessed. "When I saw that acceptance letter, I convinced myself you were just fulfilling our bargain. Is that your kindness, your laughter, the way? You defend me even when I don't deserve it. All of it was just an act. Naomi shook her head. None of it was an act. Not for me, nor for me, he said softly. I love you, Naomi. I don't want our contract to end. What are you proposing, Mr. Blackwood? She asked, eyes shining with unshed tears. Another business arrangement? No, he cupped her face gently. I'm proposing a life together, one where you become a doctor and I learn to leave the office before midnight. Where we build something real, not because of a contract or a company, but because we choose each other every day. That sounds suspiciously like love, she teased. It is, he agreed, smiling fully for perhaps the first time in years. Absolutely is. Later, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Naomi rested her head on his shoulder. You know, she mused, there are excellent medical schools right here in the city. Dominic pressed a kiss to her hair. And Blackwood Technologies is opening a healthcare division that could use a brilliant doctor's perspective. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Blackwood? I'm offering you everything I have, he replied, including a heart I didn't think could feel until you came along. Their contract had ended, but their story, their real story, was just beginning.